Chapter 1. The Perfect Trap. Kurt Collins had always believed that understanding human behavior was the key to creating unforgettable experiences. For 15 years, he built an empire designing immersive theater productions and escape rooms that pushed participants to their psychological limits. His company, Immersion Interactive, had made him wealthy beyond his modest upbringing in rural Pennsylvania, but more importantly, it had taught him something invaluable. Everyone has a breaking point, and everyone reveals their true nature when they think no one's watching. He should have applied that wisdom to his own life sooner. The headaches had started 6 months ago, dull, persistent things that bloomed behind his eyes like dark flowers. Sasha, his wife of 13 years, had been attentive at first, bringing him herbal teas and scheduling doctor's appointments. But the medications they prescribed only seemed to make things worse. His balance deteriorated. His speech occasionally slurred. At 42, Kurt found himself struggling to climb the stairs in his own home. "You're working too hard," Sasha would say, her hand cool against his fevered forehead. "You need to slow down, honey. Think about Millie. She needs her father." Millie, his 11-year-old daughter, all sharp angles and sharper wit, with her mother's dark hair and what Kurt had thought was his own stubborn streak. He'd noticed the distance growing between them over the past months, the way she'd flinch when he tried to hug her, the cold silence that had replaced their once easy banter. "She's just at that age," Derek, his younger brother, had said over drinks 3 weeks ago. "Preteen years are rough. She'll come around." But Derek hadn't seen what Kurt saw, the way Millie looked at him sometimes, with something that resembled fear. Or worse, contempt. The stroke happened on a Tuesday night, right after dinner. Kurt remembered Sasha's chicken marsala, the way the wine tasted slightly bitter, and then the sudden sensation of the world tilting violently to the left. His right side went numb. Words became impossible shapes in his mouth. He heard Sasha screaming, felt the impact as he hit the hardwood floor, and then nothing but fractured consciousness and the wail of sirens. St. Catherine's Hospital ICU became his new reality. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that breathed for him, monitored him, kept him tethered to life by the thinnest of threads. The doctors spoke in grave tones about massive cerebral infarction, about touch and go, about preparing for the worst. Kurt couldn't move, couldn't speak, but he could hear, he could see, he could think, and he could understand exactly what locked-in syndrome meant. A functioning mind trapped in an unresponsive body, a consciousness buried alive. Chapter 2. The Unplugging. The ICU had a rhythm, the steady beep of monitors, the soft squeak of nurses' shoes, the hushed conversations beyond his curtain. Kurt learned to track time by shift changes and the quality of light filtering through the blinds. Morning brought Dr. Gennaro Riley with his gentle examinations and cautious optimism. Afternoon brought Sasha, who sat by his bedside and held his limp hand while making calls about insurance and arrangements. "The house needs to be refinanced," he heard her tell someone. "Saul," she called him, a name Kurt didn't recognize from their social circle. "Yes, I know, baby. Soon. Just a little longer. He's not going to make it. The doctors said as much. We just need to be patient." "Baby." The word echoed in Kurt's trapped mind. She'd never called him that, not even in their early days. The nurse, Maggie Reed, was different from the others. Older, maybe 60, with steel-gray hair and eyes that actually looked at Kurt, not through him. She talked to him during her rounds, told him about her grandson's baseball games, asked questions she never expected him to answer. But sometimes, Kurt swore she was watching his eyes more carefully than the machines. On the 5th day, Millie came. Kurt heard her before he saw her, the reluctant shuffle of sneakers against linoleum, Sasha's voice coaxing and cajoling. "Come on, sweetie. Say goodbye to Daddy." It's what he would want. Goodbye. Not get well. Goodbye. Millie appeared in his field of vision, and Kurt's heart, the one thing that still worked properly, shattered. Her face was carefully blank, but her hands trembled as they clutched her phone. Those hands that he'd taught to tie shoelaces, to ride a bike, to shuffle cards for their Sunday magic trick sessions. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice flat. "Rehearsed." Sasha's hand rested on Millie's shoulder, fingers pressing just slightly too tight. Kurt recognized the grip. He'd used similar psychological pressure in his immersive experiences to guide participants toward specific choices. But this was his daughter, his little girl. "Your phone's almost dead, honey," Sasha murmured. "Didn't you bring your charger?" I forgot it in the car. Millie's eyes darted around the room, landing on the outlet where Kurt's ventilator was plugged in. The machine that breathed for him. The machine keeping him alive. Well, Sasha said, her voice honey-sweet poison. Daddy's got a plug right there. He won't mind. He can't feel anything anyway. The doctors said he's basically already gone. No. The word screamed in Kurt's mind, but his body remained frozen. No, Millie. Don't listen to her. Millie hesitated, looking at her father's face. For a moment, just a flash, Kurt saw uncertainty in her eyes. Saw his little girl, the one who used to crawl into his lap during thunderstorms, who made him friendship bracelets, who called him her hero. Mom said you're suffering, Millie whispered, so quiet Kurt almost didn't hear. That it's cruel to keep you like this. That you'd want to go. Her hand moved toward the ventilator plug. Kurt tried everything. Tried to move his eyes, tried to make a sound, tried to will his daughter to see him, really see him. But locked-in syndrome was a perfect prison. Go ahead, sweetie, Sasha encouraged. It's mercy. Millie pulled the plug. The ventilator alarm shrieked. Kurt's lungs burned, screaming for air that wouldn't come. His vision began to darken at the edges. But he could still see Millie plugging in her phone, her hands shaking violently now, tears streaming down her face. You're dying anyway, Dad, she said, the words sounding forced, broken. Mom said. The ICU room exploded with activity. Maggie Reed burst through the curtain, her face a mask of professional fury. She shoved Millie aside, not roughly, but firmly, and plugged the ventilator back in. Other nurses flooded in. Sasha was crying, playing the devastated wife beautifully. She didn't understand. Sasha wailed. She's just a child. She thought she was helping him. But Kurt saw Maggie's eyes lock onto the security camera in the corner of the room. Saw the grim set of her jaw. Saw her mouth form silent words that looked like, I saw everything. As they stabilized him, as Sasha was led away with Millie, as the chaos slowly subsided, Kurt made himself a promise. If he survived this, when he survived this, he would find out exactly what had happened to his daughter, who had poisoned her mind, who had turned his little girl into a weapon, and he would make them pay. Chapter 3, The Awakening. Recovery was a study in deception. The stroke had been severe, Dr. Riley explained to Sasha, but Kurt was showing unexpected signs of improvement. The locked-in syndrome was gradually releasing its grip. Movement returned in tiny increments, a finger twitch, a toe curl, a slight turn of the head. Speech would take longer. Cognition, they worried, might be permanently impaired. Kurt encouraged that belief. He learned quickly that people spoke freely around those they believed were mentally compromised. He garbled his words intentionally, let his eyes drift unfocused, drooled slightly when they fed him. All while his mind worked with perfect clarity, cataloging every conversation, every visitor, every slip of the tongue. Maggie Reed was his only true ally, and she knew it. 3 days after the incident, she waited until they were alone during a late shift, then leaned close to his ear. The camera caught everything, she whispered. I saved the footage before it could be lost. Your wife coached your daughter. I heard her practicing the lines in the hallway before they came in. That little girl was terrified, Kurt. Absolutely terrified. Kurt managed to squeeze her hand, a gesture small enough to seem involuntary to anyone else watching. I don't know what you're caught up in, Maggie continued. But I've been a nurse for 36 years, and I know evil when I see it. Your wife is planning something. I heard her on the phone talking about your will, about selling the company. You need to be careful, and you need someone you can trust. She slipped a card into his hand, her personal cell number. Over the next 2 weeks, as Kurt's recovery progressed at a carefully calibrated pace, he pieced together the conspiracy through overheard conversations and Sasha's increasingly careless phone calls. The picture that emerged was darker than he'd imagined. Saul Randolph, real estate developer, charming sociopath, and Sasha's lover for the past 2 years. They'd met at a charity gala Kurt had been too busy to attend. The affair had been immediate and, it seemed, meticulously planned. Saul specialized in acquiring properties from distressed owners, flipping them for massive profits. He saw Kurt's company and Kurt's portfolio of real estate holdings for his various immersive experiences as his next big score. The life insurance alone is $2 million, he heard Sasha tell Saul during one visit. Plus the company's worth at least 8, and the property's another 12. We just need him to die, or get him declared incompetent. The stroke was perfect, baby. Perfect. What about the kid? Saul asked. Millie. Sasha laughed, a sound Kurt no longer recognized. She'll do whatever I tell her. I've been working on her for months, telling her how sick Daddy is, how he's not the same person, how he'd want to be released from his suffering. She's scared of him now. Thinks he's some kind of monster in a hospital bed. It's actually kind of sad how easy it was. Kurt felt something crack inside him. Not breaking, but transforming. Hardening. His wife had systematically alienated his daughter, manipulated a child's love into a weapon, tried to murder him through their daughter's innocent hands. And for what? Money. A affair. Greed dressed up in Prada and promises. Derek visited in the third week, and Kurt took a calculated risk. When the nurses were out of earshot, he gripped his brother's wrist with surprising strength and locked eyes with him. Really locked eyes, with all the intelligence and awareness he'd been hiding. Derek's eyes widened. Kurt, you're playing possum, Kurt whispered, his voice raspy from disuse but clear. They tried to kill me, Derek. Sasha and her boyfriend. They used Millie. Jesus Christ. Derek looked toward the door, then back at Kurt. What do you need? Everything on Saul Randolph. Every dirty deal, every skeleton, every secret. And I need you to check my medical records from the past 6 months, specifically, what medication Sasha was giving me at home. I think she was poisoning me, causing the symptoms that led to the stroke. Derek's face went pale. Kurt, if that's true, it is true, and I'm going to prove it. But first, I need to get out of here. I need to get strong, and I need them to think they've won. Kurt's hand tightened on Derek's wrist. Can you help me? Derek Collins had always been the quieter brother, the steady one, the accountant who'd chosen a safe life over Kurt's riskier creative ventures. But beneath that mild exterior was the same stubborn Pennsylvania steel that had built their father's construction business, the same loyalty that had kept their family together after their parents died. I'm in, Derek said. Whatever you need. But Kurt. Millie. What are you going to do about Millie? Kurt's expression softened for the first time since the unplugging. I'm going to save her. She's a victim in this too. Sasha warped her mind, made her into something she's not. I'm going to show Millie the truth. I'm going to get my daughter back. And Sasha? The softness vanished, replaced by something cold and purposeful. Kurt had spent 15 years studying human psychology, understanding what made people tick, what broke them, what made them reveal their true selves. He'd created experiences that stripped away personas and exposed raw truth. Now he would create his masterpiece. Sasha and Saul are going to play a game, Kurt said. One last immersive experience. Custom designed just for them. And by the time it's over, they'll confess everything. They'll destroy themselves. And they'll do it on camera, with the whole world watching. Derek stared at his brother, seeing something he'd never quite seen before. Not rage, not hatred, but a focused, intelligent determination that was somehow more frightening than either emotion. How long do you need? Kurt smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. The game starts the moment I leave this hospital. Tell me, Derek, do you know anything about elaborate revenge? Chapter 4, The Inheritance. Kurt spent 6 weeks in rehabilitation, carefully maintaining the fiction that his cognitive abilities were severely compromised. He shuffled when he walked, struggled with simple tasks, and spoke in fragmented sentences. The hospital staff pitied him. Sasha visited less and less, her mask of wifely devotion slipping. Perfect. Derek became his secret eyes and ears. While Kurt pretended to watch cartoons in the rehabilitation center, his brother was building a case that would make a prosecutor weep. The medical records told the first story. For 6 months prior to the stroke, Kurt's home prescriptions had been filled by 3 different pharmacies. Unusual, but not impossible. Derek tracked down the medications: blood pressure pills, anti-anxiety medication, anticoagulants. Separately, they were harmless. Together, in the combinations and dosages Sasha had been administering, disguised in Kurt's evening tea, they created a perfect storm of cardiovascular disaster. She was engineering a stroke, Derek explained during a late-night visit, showing Kurt the analysis from a toxicologist he'd hired. Slowly, methodically, the symptoms you experienced, the headaches, balance issues, slurred speech, those were warnings. If you'd kept taking what she was giving you, the stroke was inevitable. She just got impatient and increased the doses toward the end. Saul Randolph's background was equally illuminating. 3 wives, 2 of whom had died in convenient accidents. The first, a rock-climbing fall. The second, a house fire. Both had substantial life insurance policies. Both had been generous with their signatures on power of attorney documents shortly before their deaths. The man's a serial killer with good lawyers, Derek said flatly. He's never been charged, but the pattern is clear. Sasha isn't his partner. She's his next victim. He'll kill you both eventually, take everything, and disappear. It's his playbook. Kurt absorbed this information with cold clarity. Sasha might have started this for greed and lust, but she'd tied herself to a monster who would inevitably turn on her. The irony was almost poetic. The third piece came from Maggie Reed, who'd been quietly investigating on her own. Using her access to hospital systems, she'd tracked Millie's pediatrician visits over the past 6 months. The records showed a troubling pattern: anxiety, night terrors, sudden behavioral changes. The doctor's notes suggested family stress, possibly parental conflict. But the real bombshell was in the therapist's confidential notes, which Maggie really shouldn't have been able to access. But her daughter worked in the psychiatric department. The therapist had noted that Millie described increasing fear of her father, but the descriptions were oddly scripted, inconsistent. The child seemed to be repeating things she'd been told rather than relating her own experiences. Classic parental alienation, Maggie explained. I've seen it in custody cases. The mother systematically poisons the child's mind against the father, tells them horror stories, twists innocent actions into threatening ones, isolates them emotionally. Your daughter is a victim, Kurt, but the damage can be undone if you act fast. Kurt was released from rehabilitation in early December. Sasha picked him up with a performance worthy of an Oscar. Tears, declarations of love, promises of caring for him at home. She'd already converted the downstairs study into a bedroom for him, hired a home care nurse, and begun the process of having herself declared his legal guardian and medical power of attorney. She drove him home with her hand on his knee, making sympathetic noises about his condition. Kurt stared out the window, playing his role, while his mind worked through the final details of his plan. The house felt alien, a stage set where he'd once lived a real life. But now he saw the props clearly. The photos on the walls, carefully curated to show a happy family. The kitchen where Sasha had poisoned him. Millie's room, where his daughter now lived in a reality constructed by her mother's lies. That night, while Sasha thought he was sleeping, Kurt heard her on the phone with Saul. He's completely out of it. Like a zombie. The lawyers said we can file for incompetency in 3 months. Then everything transfers to me, and we can handle things. Maybe another stroke. Maybe an accident. The home nurse won't suspect anything. She's one of those bleeding hearts who believes everything I tell her. What about the kid? Millie? Please. She's been so brainwashed she barely even looks at him anymore. Feels guilty as hell about the hospital thing, which makes her even easier to control. She'll do whatever I say. Kurt felt that cold, hard thing inside him crystallize into pure purpose. Tomorrow, the game would begin, and everyone would play exactly as he designed. Chapter 5. Setting the board. The resurrection of Kurt Collins began not with a dramatic reveal, but with a phone call. Derek made it on a Tuesday morning to Simon Gregory, Kurt's business attorney and oldest friend from college. The message was simple. Kurt wanted to update his will. Immediately. And he wanted to establish an unusual trust structure that would require certain conditions to be met before any inheritance could be distributed. He's that aware? Simon asked, surprised. Sasha told me he was barely functioning. Sasha, Derek said carefully, has been economical with the truth. Kurt's cognitive abilities are better than anyone realizes. But he wants to play this carefully. Can you come to the house tomorrow at 2? She'll be out. She has Pilates Wednesdays. The attorney visit was the first domino. Kurt, playing his diminished role for the home care nurse, suddenly became sharp and focused when Simon arrived. They spent 3 hours drafting new documents that would make Sasha's plans impossible and set the trap for his ultimate revenge. The new will was a masterpiece of legal maneuvering. Instead of transferring everything directly to Sasha, it created a complex trust structure. To access the full inheritance, including the company, properties, and investments, Sasha, Millie, and any other heirs would have to participate in a family challenge designed by Kurt before his death. An immersive experience, Kurt explained, his voice steady and clear. One last game. My final creation. They'll have to complete it together to unlock the inheritance. Every task, every puzzle, every challenge will be designed to reveal the truth about what happened to me, about what Sasha did. And it'll all be recorded, just like my commercial experiences. Simon looked troubled. Kurt, this is creative, but is it legal? And more importantly, what if Sasha just refuses to participate? The money is locked otherwise. $20 million, Simon. She won't be able to resist. And neither will Saul when she inevitably brings him in. Kurt's smile was cold. Greed is the most reliable human motivation. I've built my career on understanding it. The second domino was technological. Derek brought in Linwood Benitez, a former employee from Immersion Interactive who specialized in hidden cameras and audio systems. Together, they began wiring Kurt's house with surveillance equipment disguised as everyday objects: a clock, a smoke detector, a picture frame. Every room, Kurt instructed, I need to document everything, not just for the game, but for the eventual criminal case. Battery, attempted murder, fraud, parental alienation. I want it all recorded. The third domino was psychological. Kurt began a careful campaign of appearing to deteriorate further. He had episodes where he didn't recognize people. He fell frequently, appearing weaker. He babbled nonsensically. Sasha's relief was palpable and documented. He's getting worse, she told Saul on a call that the hidden cameras captured perfectly. Another few weeks, and we can probably smother him with a pillow, call it natural causes. No one would question it. Don't get impatient, Saul warned. These things have to look natural. Trust the process. The fourth domino was Millie. This was the most delicate piece, and Kurt knew he couldn't rush it. His daughter avoided him completely now, eating meals in her room, leaving for school early, returning late. The few times she saw him, her face twisted with what looked like disgust and fear. It broke his heart. But Derek had hired Kelly Garza, a child psychologist who specialized in parental alienation. She explained the careful process of deprogramming, of creating opportunities for Millie to see the contradictions in what she'd been told, of rebuilding trust. She needs to discover the truth herself, Kelly advised. If you force it, she'll resist. But if you create situations where her mother's lies become obvious, where her own memories contradict the narrative she's been fed, her mind will start to question. Children are remarkably resilient and smart. She'll figure it out. Kurt designed his masterpiece over 3 weeks. The inheritance game would take place at his most ambitious property, the Blackwood Estate, a sprawling Victorian mansion he'd converted into his company's flagship immersive experience venue. The building was already rigged with every technological trick imaginable: secret passages, hidden rooms, sophisticated audio and visual systems, and most importantly, hundreds of cameras that captured every angle. The game would be simple on its surface, a series of puzzles and challenges, each themed around memories of their family life. Complete all the challenges, find the combination to the vault, and access the inheritance. But woven through every challenge would be evidence, video clips, audio recordings, documents that told the real story of the past 6 months. The participants would condemn themselves with their own words, their own actions, all captured on camera. And when the game ended, Kurt would be there, not the shambling invalid, but the man they'd tried to destroy. On Christmas Eve, Kurt made his move. He had Simon deliver formal letters to Sasha, Millie, and, surprisingly to Sasha, Saul Randolph, who was named in the new will as a close family friend. The letters explained the inheritance game, scheduled for December 28th. Participation was mandatory for any claim to the estate. And there was one more condition. Only those who completed the entire experience without quitting could access the inheritance. Anyone who left forfeited their entire claim. Sasha called Saul immediately, her voice picked up by the bedroom camera. Did you get the letter? Yeah. The old man's crazier than we thought. He wants us to play some kind of escape room game for $20 million. We have to do it, Sasha said. It's the only way to access the money. But if he's coherent enough to design this, maybe he's coherent enough to change the will again. We need to move faster. No. Saul's voice was firm. We play his stupid game. Let him think he's in control. Then after we get access to the inheritance, we handle the situation permanently. The game might even give us opportunities. It's in that big, empty mansion, right? Accidents happen in old buildings. Kurt, listening through the surveillance system Derek had installed in his room, smiled. They were doing exactly what he'd predicted. Walking straight into the trap. But there was one player whose moves he couldn't predict. Millie, his daughter, the pawn who needed to become free. Chapter 6. The Players Assemble. The days between Christmas and the game were thick with tension. Sasha made a show of preparing Kurt for the exciting family event, while secretly meeting with Saul to strategize. They didn't know that every meeting, every phone call, every whispered plan was being recorded in high definition. Derek had moved into the guest house behind the property, ostensibly to help care for his brother. In reality, he was coordinating with Linwood, Kelly, and a growing team that included Maggie Reed, who'd taken vacation days to help, and Tyron Hoover, a criminal attorney Derek had retained for the eventual prosecution. The evidence is overwhelming, Tyron said, reviewing the footage and medical records. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, child endangerment. But we need the final piece. We need them to confess, on camera, with clear intent. That's what the game will provide. Millie remained the unknown variable. She'd received her letter and read it with confused interest. For the first time in weeks, Kurt saw a flicker of the old Millie, the puzzle solver, the girl who loved mysteries and challenges. Sasha tried to frame the game as a chore, something they had to get through, but Millie actually seemed intrigued. On December 27th, Kurt orchestrated his most daring move yet. He accidentally left his bedroom door open while struggling to walk to the bathroom. Millie, returning from school, saw him fall, a real fall, though not as severe as he made it appear. Dad, the word came out uncertain, the first time she'd addressed him directly in weeks. Kurt looked up at her, and for just a moment, dropped the invalid act. He made eye contact, real eye contact, and spoke clearly. Millie, I love you. Remember that. Then he let his face go slack again, resumed the confused mumbling. But he'd seen the flash of confusion in her eyes, confusion that meant doubt, and doubt was the first crack in Sasha's carefully constructed reality. That evening, he heard Millie crying in her room. The camera he'd had Derek install, carefully, for documentation purposes only, picked up her voice. I don't know anymore. He seemed different, like before, like my dad. The morning of December 28th arrived cold and clear. Linwood and Derek had spent the previous night at the Blackwood estate, making final preparations. Every camera was active, every system tested, every piece of evidence carefully placed. Kurt's transformation happened in the privacy of his room at 6 a.m. He showered, shaved, dressed in clothes that actually fit his now leaner frame. The home care nurse was off for the holidays. Sasha was still sleeping. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw the man he'd been. Focused, intelligent, purposeful, staring back. At 8 a.m., as planned, Derek picked up Kurt in a van with tinted windows. They drove to Blackwood Estate through the back entrance. Kurt would be in the control room for the first phase of the game, watching through the extensive camera system, his voice modulated and transmitted through speakers throughout the building. At 10 a.m., Sasha, Millie, and Saul Randolph pulled up to the front entrance of Blackwood Estate in Saul's Mercedes. The Victorian mansion loomed before them, all Gothic spires and dark windows, looking like something from Kurt's more theatrical productions. This is ridiculous, Sasha muttered, though her eyes betrayed her nervousness. The building represented Kurt's greatest success, and she'd spent months trying to get him to sell it. Now she had to enter it on his terms. Saul put a hand on her lower back, a possessive gesture that made Millie frown. She'd never liked her mother's friend, though she'd never quite understood why. There was something in his smile that didn't reach his eyes. The front door was unlocked. They entered into the grand foyer, where Victorian elegance met modern technology. Screens flickered to life on the walls. And Kurt's voice, clear, strong, unmistakably intelligent, filled the space. Welcome, players, to the inheritance game. I designed this experience specifically for you. Complete every challenge, solve every puzzle, and you'll gain access to the vault that holds the keys to my estate. Quit or fail, and you forfeit everything. The game begins now. Sasha went white. He can't. Sounds pretty coherent to me, Saul said grimly. The bastard's been faking. But it was Millie's reaction that mattered most to Kurt, watching through the cameras. His daughter looked around with dawning recognition, not fear, but curiosity. She knew her father's work. She understood how his mind worked. And for the first time in months, he saw the flicker of understanding in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, He could reach her before this was over. The game had begun. Chapter 7. Truth in Stages. The first challenge appeared on the screens. Memory Room. Sort your photographs by truth and lies. A door slid open to reveal a space that Kurt had designed to look like a family living room, but distorted, furniture at wrong angles, photographs covering every surface, some images clear and some corrupted. Hundreds of family photos scattered across tables. We sort them? Millie asked, her puzzle-solving instincts activating. But sort them how? Does it matter? Sasha snapped. Let's just do this quickly. This is insane. But as they began examining the photographs, Kurt's design revealed itself. Each photo came with a date and a caption on the back. Some captions were true memories. Millie's 8th birthday, their vacation to Maine, Kurt teaching Millie to ride a bike. Others were false, events that never happened, descriptions that contradicted reality. Put the truthful memories in the blue box, Kurt's voice instructed. The false ones in the red. It seemed simple, but Kurt had laced the challenge with photographs from the past 6 months, each one annotated with what Sasha had told Millie versus what had actually happened. One photo showed Kurt and Millie at her school play in September. The caption read, "Dad said he was proud of me, but Mom told me he actually complained the entire time and said I was terrible." Millie stared at the photo, her hands trembling. He didn't say that, did he? Sasha tried to grab the photo. We don't have time for this. Just put them in boxes. But Saul had found another photograph, Kurt at a doctor's appointment. The caption read, "Husband's prescription for high blood pressure medication, filled at CVS. Same week wife filled identical prescription at Walgreens under her own name. Same week husband reported strange headaches." "What the hell is this?" Saul asked, showing it to Sasha. "You told me he had a stroke from natural causes." "It was natural." Sasha's voice pitched higher. "He was stressed, working too hard." Another photo, this one found by Millie. Kurt in the hospital ICU, unconscious. The caption read, "Hours before daughter was brought in to say goodbye. Note the ventilator placement. Note the security camera in the corner." Millie dropped the photo like it burned her. "The camera? There was a camera. So what?" Sasha said quickly. "Hospitals have cameras. That's normal." "But you said..." Millie's voice was small, confused. "You said no one would know. That it was just between us. That Dad would want it. That he was already gone." Kurt, watching from the control room, felt his heart clench. His daughter's voice, the doubt and pain in it, was almost too much to bear. But Kelly, standing beside him, put a hand on his shoulder. "She's starting to question," the psychologist whispered. "This is good. Let her work through it." The memory room took 45 minutes. By the end, Millie had sorted most of the photos, her face growing paler with each one that revealed the contradictions between what she'd been told and what had actually happened. Sasha tried to rush her, to dismiss the evidence, but Millie was too smart. The puzzle pieces were clicking into place. When the blue box filled with truthful memories and the red box filled with lies, the door to the next room opened. But first, the screens lit up with a video compilation, a supercut of the truthful memories, showing Kurt and Millie's relationship before the poisoning began. Father and daughter laughing, playing, working on puzzles together. The dad she'd forgotten existed. Tears streamed down Millie's face. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember him being different. Before he got sick. Before you said." "We don't have time for this emotional nonsense," Saul interrupted. "We have a game to finish. $20 million, remember?" The second challenge was called the medicine cabinet. It was a recreation of Kurt's home bathroom, down to every detail. On the counter sat bottles of pills, each labeled with dates and prescriptions. A computer screen asked them to identify which combinations of medications would be dangerous if taken together. Sasha immediately tried to leave the room. "This is stupid. We don't need to." "Mom." Millie's voice was sharp. "These are Dad's medications. From home." She'd picked up one bottle, reading the label. "This is his blood pressure medicine. But it says it was filled at a pharmacy across town. You always picked up his pills at the CVS near us." "I was running errands that day," Sasha said quickly. Millie picked up another bottle. And another. Each from a different pharmacy. Each for medications that, according to the computer prompt, should never be combined in the doses listed. "The answer to the puzzle," Kurt's voice explained, "is to identify which person filled these prescriptions and what effect these combinations would have on someone who trusted the person preparing their evening tea." Saul looked at the screen, then at Sasha, his expression shifting from annoyed to calculating. You poisoned him. I didn't. You poisoned your husband to cause the stroke. Saul's voice was flat. You didn't tell me that part. You said he had natural health issues. What difference does it make? Sasha hissed. We were going to kill him anyway. The camera caught it. Every word. In the control room, Tyron, the attorney, made a satisfied sound. That's admissible. Clear confession. But Kurt was watching Millie. His daughter had backed away from both adults, her face white with shock. You poisoned Dad. You made him sick. You made him have the stroke. And then you made me. Millie, honey, listen. You made me try to kill him. The scream tore from Millie's throat. You told me he wanted it. You said it was mercy. You practiced what I should say. You said he was already gone. Quiet. Sasha lunged for her daughter, but Millie was faster, running from the room into the next section of the house. The game had broken open. Truth was spilling out. And Kurt's daughter was finally waking up. Chapter 8. The Confession Chamber. Millie ran through corridors that seemed to shift and change, Kurt's signature design technique. She found herself in a room she recognized, a recreation of her own bedroom, but from 2 years ago, before everything changed. Before her mother started whispering poison in her ears. A video screen activated, and Kurt appeared on it, not the shambling invalid, but her real father, looking directly at the camera. Hi, Bug. The old nickname made Millie sob. If you're seeing this, it means you made it to the truth room. And it means you're starting to remember who I really am, who we really were. I need you to know something. None of this was your fault. Your mother manipulated you. She lied to you. She twisted your mind against me because she wanted me gone. But you're not responsible for what happened in that hospital. You were a child being controlled by an adult you trusted. The guilt you feel, that's not yours to carry. Millie sank to the floor, her entire body shaking with sobs. On the screen, Kurt continued. I love you, Millie. I never stopped loving you. And when this game is over, I'm going to prove that to you. I'm going to show you that your dad, your real dad, is still here, still fighting, still protecting you. Even when you thought you'd hurt me, I was protecting you. The video ended. A door opened, revealing a small box. Inside was the friendship bracelet Millie had made Kurt 3 years ago, before any of this started. The one she thought he'd thrown away. He'd kept it. Even in the ICU, even during his darkest moments, he'd had Derek retrieve it from his hospital belongings. Millie clutched the bracelet, remembering. Really remembering. Meanwhile, in another section of the house, Sasha and Saul were falling apart. The third challenge had brought them to what Kurt called the confessional. A room designed like a church confession booth, but with a twist. To unlock the next door, they had to answer questions truthfully, with voice stress analysis running in real time. Lie, and the system would know. This is psychological warfare, Saul growled. The man's insane. He's awake, Sasha said, realization dawning. He's been awake the whole time. He's been planning this. The first question appeared on the screen. When did the affair begin? Sasha looked at Saul, then at the camera she knew was watching. 2 years ago, at a charity gala. February 14th. The voice analysis confirmed. Truth. How long have you been planning to kill Kurt Collins? Saul answered this one. About 18 months. Since Sasha told me how much he was worth. Truth. Did you poison Kurt Collins with medications designed to cause a stroke? Sasha closed her eyes. Yes. Truth. Did you manipulate your daughter into believing her father wanted to die? A longer pause. Yes. Truth. Did you instruct your daughter to unplug her father's life support? Tears now, but not from remorse, from anger at being caught. Yes. Truth. Every answer, every confession, recorded in perfect clarity. The system was designed to be impossible to beat, answer truthfully, or remain locked in the room forever. And Sasha and Saul wanted that inheritance too much to stop now. But they didn't realize they were also confessing to additional crimes. The system prompted them to explain past events, to provide details. Saul, growing frustrated and arrogant, began bragging about his previous successes, the 2 wives who died in convenient accidents, the insurance money, the properties he'd acquired. You're quite the entrepreneur, Kurt's voice said over the speakers, and this time the tone was pure ice. A serial killer with a business plan. Saul's face went purple with rage. When I get out of here, you're a dead man, Collins. You're already half dead. I'll finish the job. Another confession. Another threat. All recorded. The door finally opened, leading them to the final challenge. The vault room, where supposedly the inheritance access codes were kept. Sasha and Saul rushed forward, greed overriding caution. They didn't notice Millie joining them from a side passage, her face streaked with tears but her eyes clear. She'd found her own way through the house. Kurt had designed multiple paths, knowing his daughter's intelligence and curiosity would lead her to shortcuts. The vault room was Kurt's masterpiece. The walls were lined with screens, each showing different footage from the past 6 months. Sasha poisoning Kurt's tea. Sasha coaching Millie on what to say in the hospital. Saul and Sasha planning Kurt's death. Their confessions from moments ago. Everything. And standing in the center of the room, very much alive and very much aware, was Kurt Collins. Chapter 9. Immersion complete. The shock on Sasha's face would have been comical if the situation weren't so deadly serious. Saul immediately lunged forward, but doors slammed shut behind them. Derek, Maggie, Tyron, and Linwood emerged from hidden panels. Behind them, police officers that Tyron had coordinated with entered through the main entrance. Surprise, Kurt said softly. Game over. You can't. This isn't legal, Sasha sputtered. Actually, Tyron stepped forward. Every square inch of this building is private property, and every participant signed consent forms for recording as part of the inheritance game structure. Those forms were in the initial letter. You agreed to be recorded. You agreed to participate. And you just confessed to attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, child endangerment, and Mr. Randolph here also confessed to 2 counts of actual murder. No jury will convict based on some elaborate game, Saul started. They will when it's combined with the medical evidence. Maggie Reed stepped forward, her nurse's uniform replaced with professional attire. The pharmacy records, the toxicology reports, the hospital security footage, the documentation of parental alienation. This game just got you to confess to everything we already had evidence for. Kurt walked toward Sasha, his movements strong and sure. Nothing like the invalid she'd thought she'd created. You tried to poison me. You tried to kill me using our daughter. You spent months destroying her relationship with me, turning her into a weapon. And you know what the worst part is? You're her mother. She loved you. She trusted you. And you used that to make her think she'd murdered her own father. I didn't. The cameras caught everything, Kurt said, including you coaching her in the hospital hallway, including you telling her to unplug the ventilator, including you telling Saul that you'd brainwashed her so well she'd do anything you said. Your own words, Sasha. Your own confession. Sasha lunged at Kurt, fingernails extended like claws. Derek intercepted her easily, restraining her as police moved in with handcuffs. You bastard, she screamed. You manipulative bastard. This whole thing was a trap. Yes, Kurt agreed calmly. I designed an immersive experience tailored specifically to you. Every challenge was meant to reveal truth and force confession. It's what I do for a living. I just usually don't design them for criminals. He paused. But then again, I never had such personal motivation before. Saul was fighting against the officers, still raging. You can't prove anything about my wives. Those were accidents. Actually, Tyron said, pulling out his phone and playing back the audio from the confessional chamber. You just confessed to those 2. And the police in both jurisdictions are very interested in reopening those cases. You were remarkably detailed in your bragging. As police read them their rights and led them away, Kurt finally turned to Millie. His daughter stood frozen, her face a mask of confusion, guilt, and dawning hope. Millie, Kurt said gently. She burst into tears. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I thought. Mom said, I didn't know. Kurt crossed the distance between them and pulled his daughter into his arms for the first time in months. She was stiff at first, years of manufactured fear making her resistant, but then she collapsed against him, sobbing. It's okay, Bug. I know. I know what she did to you. I know you didn't understand. I tried to kill you. Millie sobbed into his chest. In the hospital, I unplugged. You did what a mother you trusted told you to do. You thought you were showing mercy. You were manipulated, Millie. You're 11 years old. None of this was your fault. Kelly Garza stepped forward, introducing herself. Millie, my name is Kelly. I'm a doctor who helps kids who've been through what you've been through. Your dad asked me to be here because he wanted you to have support. What your mother did, it has a name. It's called parental alienation. She systematically made you believe things that weren't true about your father. But I remember. Millie pulled back, looking at Kurt's face. I remember being scared of you. I remember thinking you were different, angry, dangerous. Your mother planted those memories, Kelly explained gently. She told you stories, showed you carefully edited photos, interpreted normal actions as threatening. She manipulated your perception. The real memories, the ones of your dad teaching you magic tricks, reading with you, coaching your soccer team, those were real. The fear was manufactured. Kurt wiped his daughter's tears. Do you remember the friendship bracelet? Millie looked down at the bracelet she was still clutching. I thought you threw it away. Mom said you told her it was childish and you didn't want it. I've had it in my wallet every day since you gave it to me, Kurt said. Even in the ICU. Even when I couldn't move or speak. Derek brought it to me because I asked him to. Because it's my most precious possession. Because you're my most precious person. Millie's face crumpled. I believe you now. I see it. In the hospital, when I unplugged the ventilator, you tried to look at me. You tried to tell me something. I was trying to tell you I love you, Kurt said. And that none of this was your fault. And that I'd fight my way back to prove it. And you did. Millie's voice was small, but wondering. You fought through a stroke. You pretended to be worse than you were. You planned all of this. You're a badass dad. Despite everything, Kurt laughed. Language, bug. Mom uses worse words. Yeah, well, Mom's going to prison. Kurt said it matter-of-factly. What she did was illegal, Millie. She'll be gone for a long time. That means it'll be you and me, with Uncle Derek helping out. And Kelly, if you want her support. And we'll have to work through a lot of stuff together. You're going to have days where you're angry at me, or confused, or scared. That's normal after what you've been through. But I promise you, we'll get through it. Millie looked up at her father. Really looked at him, seeing him clearly for the first time in months. You built this whole thing just to save me. Not just to save you, Kurt said. To get justice. To stop them from hurting anyone else. But yes, mostly to save you. Because you're my daughter, and I love you, and I'd build 1,000 games if that's what it took to bring you home. 3 months later, Kurt and Millie sat in their newly remodeled kitchen. The room where Sasha had poisoned him was now completely different, painted in warm yellows, the old teacups thrown away. They were making cookies, and Kurt was teaching Millie a card trick. The key is misdirection, he explained. You make people look where you want them to look, so they miss what's really happening. Like you did with Mom and Saul, Millie said. She could talk about it now without crying, though Kelly said the healing process would take years. Exactly like that. Sasha had been sentenced to 25 years. Saul was facing life without parole after authorities in 2 states brought murder charges for his previous wives. The evidence from Kurt's game had been ruled admissible. The consent forms were valid, the property was private, and every confession had been voluntary, if coerced by circumstance. Millie was in therapy twice a week, working through the parental alienation and the trauma of the hospital incident. But she was also smiling more, laughing again, letting Kurt hug her without flinching. The real memories were returning, pushing out the manufactured ones. Dad, Millie asked, focused on the cards. Are you ever going to do another immersive experience? Like, for your company? Kurt had stepped back from Immersion Interactive, letting Derek run operations while he focused on Millie. But he'd been thinking about it. Maybe. Someday. When you're ready. But nothing like what I did to your mom. I don't know, Millie said, grinning, the first real grin he'd seen in almost a year. That was pretty epic. You should turn it into an attraction. The inheritance game. Solve the mystery or confess your crimes. That's dark, bug. I learned from the best. She successfully completed the card trick, making the ace disappear and reappear. Besides, you showed me something important. What's that? That when bad people think they've won, when they think you're helpless, that's when you're actually most dangerous. You taught me to fight smart, not just hard. You taught me that truth always finds a way out. She looked up at him, her eyes, so much like his, clear and bright. You taught me that love is stronger than manipulation. Kurt pulled his daughter into a hug, this time met with no resistance, just her arms wrapping around him tightly. Outside, Derek was arriving for dinner. Maggie had become a family friend and would join them. The house was filling with real people, real relationships, real love. The game was over. The bad guys had lost. His daughter was home. And Kurt Collins, who'd survived poisoning, a stroke, and attempted murder, had done more than get revenge. He'd saved his family. He'd won. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.